Уважаемые участники форума, через несколько минут начнется пленарное заседание. Просим вас получить оборудование для синхронного перевода и занять места в зрительном зале. В связи с прямой трансляцией двери в зал будут заблокированы. Убедительно просим вас выключить ваши мобильные телефоны. Спасибо. Для участия в пленарном заседании нас
We invite to the stage
экс-заместитель премьер-министра и министра экономического развития, депутат Национального собрания Болгарии Румен Гечев, член Палаты депутатов Чили, член группы дружбы с Россией Карлос Игнасио Кушель-Сильва, заместитель директора Конфедерации индийской промышленности Маниш Кумар, директор по международному развитию компании Сай Ситха Чейтрели Хозай, министр экономического развития, окружающей среды и туризма провинции Лимпопо Табо Маконе,
Member of the Executive Council for Economic Development, Environment and Tourism of the Limpopo, Tabo Makole. Head of the GR Department of Alibaba Group, Sergey Lebedev.
Председатель компании Циндао Aston Engineering Technology,
Chairman of the Tsingtao Eastern Engineering Technology Transfer Code, Zhao Dong Yuan.
Модератор, журналист, писатель, общественный
Moderator, journalist, writer, public figure, Dan Roods.
Ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests, Your Excellency, a cooperation agreement between countries such as SEO and BRICS is a little bit like a courtship and a marriage. We can make declarations and write long love letters to each other, but sooner or later we have to consummate this marriage. Otherwise, it stays a very long-term project. It reminds me a bit of the relationship between the famous 19th century French author Honoré de Balzac, who received an anonymous letter from a Polish-Russian countess, Madame Ewelina Hanska, in 1832. For years afterwards, they wrote each other passionate letters. She was married to an older man who died in 1841, but they could not get married as it would be against the terms of her husband's will. When they finally got married in 1850 and moved to Paris all together, Balzac died only 5 months later. So in effect, he'd waited almost half his life for this lady, only to die when the great moment came. The moral of this story to me is that if there is a relationship, one should act on it and not postpone its consummation forever. As the famous English economist John Maynard Keynes once said, in the long term, we are all dead. However, as we know, before an entrepreneur jumps in to do business in a country, he wants to know if his investment will be safe. So one of the topics we need to touch upon within the context of SEO and BRICS is business protection. How safe are our businesses in the various countries? The capital and assets of entrepreneurs investing in our countries must be protected. This is of primary importance. A second issue that we need to address would be cooperation between business and government in order to create favorable conditions. Now, I know in South Africa we have a body called NEDLAC. It stands for the National Economic Development and Labour Council, and it's on its website it says that it is the vehicle by which government, labor, business, and community organizations seek to cooperate through problem-solving and negotiation on economic, labor, and development issues and related challenges facing the country. Now, I'm sure in many of the other countries there are similar bodies. And the third series of questions I would like to put to the panel would be the opportunities for cooperation between the SCO and BRICS countries, and perhaps also between the regions such as Bashkortostan and provinces or regions in some of the other countries. So without further ado, I'd like to ask our first panelist, Mr. Rumen Getchev. He's the ex-Deputy Prime Minister and Deputy Minister of Economic Development and a member of the National Assembly of Bulgaria. The first question I would like to put to Mr. Getchev would be, what do you see as the economic potential resulting from greater cooperation between the countries of SCO and BRICS?
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the invitation to take part in this wonderful and very fruitful meeting here in Bashkiria by Bulgarian. I will speak in English and later on maybe a little bit in Russian. First of all, we are facing new reality. The situation in the European Union is changing because of the relationship between the European Union and the United Kingdom, the European Union and the United States, which leads to the following. If there is a Brexit, the United Kingdom has an economy of $3 trillion US. It's about 15% of the GDP, gross domestic product of the European Union. It doesn't matter anymore, well, it matters to a certain extent, but if the United Kingdom is going to leave the European Union, and no, but the impact is tremendously negative on the European Union already. It means that the competition within the European Union is going to increase dramatically, firstly. Secondly, the countries of the European Union, they must look for new markets if they are willing to escape from the upcoming recession. Next, the European economy is moving extremely slow. It's in the range of 1% annually, talking about the countries from the Eurozone. And the economic forecasts are very pessimistic. So from economic point of view, what I'm saying, and it's a great hope, that the economic reality will give very strong pressure on the European politicians to look differently in the direction of East. Russia, India, China, South Korea, Japan, shortly speaking, Asia. There is no other opportunities for the Europeans. So my prediction will be that willy-nilly, even the rightist politicians from the European Union, they have to do their best to expand, to intensify, and to improve the economic relations with Russia, as I said, with China. At the moment, as you know, the European Union, the most important partners for the European Union will be China and Russia and India in the coming 5-10 years. If you take a look at the turnover, you will see that the foreign trade turnover is increasing dramatically between the European Union and China during the last 10 years, but especially during the last 5 years. There are temporary problems in the foreign trade turnover and foreign direct investments between the European Union and Russia because of the, that's my personal perspective, artificial sanctions against Russia. It's really strange because the United States are increasing their presence in Russia. More than 3,000 US companies are operating within the Russian economy. The American companies are #1 in the special economic zones in Russia, but at the same time they are giving pressure, the Americans, Washington, gives pressure on Brussels and the European Union to shrink the economic relations between the European Union and Russia, especially. My forecast will be that because of the economic pressure I was talking about, there is no other solution but the European Union must soften and eliminate the sanctions against Russia. And then there will be much greater opportunities for exchange of financial resources, exchange of technologies, exchange of investments, and so on. Also, in addition to the new reality, from economic point of view, the macroeconomic perspective, there are other changes in the world economy. The United States and Europe are not anymore the single leader in the technological innovations. If you take a look at the contemporary electronics and industrial robots, then you'll see, or aerospace industry, you'll see that Asia is a leader already. So if the countries of the European Union are looking for better competitiveness, if they are looking for higher economic growth, they need not just new markets, but they also need to exchange new technologies. For instance, it's very impressive, but the country with the highest number of industrial robots at the moment is China. China used to have only 6,000–7,000 industrial robots back in 2004. Last year they have 350,000 industrial robots, while other leading countries like the United States or Germany or France, they have in the range of 150, 200 and something thousand robots. So if we are willing to be more productive, you have to increase the productivity. And finally, forget about the cheap labor. Cheap labor is not a factor anymore. If you take a look at the statistical data, the countries with the highest productivity and highest competitiveness, let's say the first 15, 20 countries in the world, these are countries with the highest salaries. So what matters here is not the price on labor. What matters here is the productivity of labor. So very important reason to cooperate with China, Russia, India, and the other countries is not because the cheaper labor, once again, is not the most decisive factor. What is decisive here is to exchange technologies, to work together, to cooperate in the field of improvement of these technologies, especially in the field of aerospace industry, machinery building, electronics, industrial robots, and so on. So the good news is that willy-nilly, the political elite in the European Union has to do something differently, has to improve and expand the economic relations with the countries from the Shanghai Agreement and from BRICS in general, because this is the only alternative to the deepening economic problems within the European Union and between the European Union and the United States. And my country, Bulgaria, also is looking for opportunities for cooperation with Russia, with the different Russian regions, including Bashkiria, simply because it's going to be in favor of our nations. Большое спасибо.
Well, thank you very much. Maybe as a follow-up question, if I understand you correctly, you are saying that because of the economic problems currently in the EU related to Brexit, but we've also seen the German economy stagnating somewhat at the moment, and there are problems in France. France is also in quite a stagnant situation. They will ultimately be forced to cooperate, to cooperate with the BRICS and the SCO countries. Am I understanding you correctly? If they wanted to grow their economies, they will have to get rid of the sanctions against Russia and open up more economic exchange between the two blocs.
Yeah. I'm listening to theirs because there is an echo when you're speaking. So you're absolutely right. Yes,
sorry, I also found that if we speak in English, then you know, you don't need to put on the translation gadget, because otherwise it causes the echo.
As I said, there is an echo, but it's not a problem. So you're absolutely right, because the German economy, this is the locomotive of the European economy, and they are moving down. The predictions, the forecast for the current year will be that in the best case, the German economy will grow only by 1%, which is a tragedy for Germany and for the rest of Europe. The other economies in Europe, France, Italy, Spain, are in worse condition. Also, there are very serious problems within the Eurozone, but it's a long conversation. Also, by the way, in addition, the energy dependence, there is no way to eliminate the energy dependence from Russia and Middle East. Simply because if you take a look at the statistical data, even if the Americans are using their 100% capacity to produce LNG and supply Europe with LNG, the American capacity is up to 20 billion cubic meters annually. This is the capacity of the United States. And the annual demand in Europe is 200 billion. So there is no way to escape. Willy-nilly, the import of energy resources from Russia have to be increased. And finally, if you take a look at the relationship between economy and politics, and always we have to take a look at these dependencies because they're of crucial importance. If you take a look at the Middle East, the supply for Europe through the Middle East is under question because there are new players over there. The impact of Russia, Iran, and Turkey is increasing. The relationship between Turkey and Russia is improving, and it's worsening between Turkey and the European Union and the United States. So what I'm saying that directly or indirectly, the energy supply in Europe, and energy supply is of crucial importance for the whole European economy, also will depend on the export from Russia and the other countries. So from that perspective, in a way to improve the balance of trade and to make it positive for the European Union as an alternative to the increased import of energy resources, we have to increase the export from the European Union to BRICS. At the same time, of course, if you're willing to increase the export, you have to open your doors for import. And maybe the best solution will be stimulating mainly the cooperation in the field of production, because this is the best way to eliminate political impact, to eliminate some of the import restrictions for the BRICS export to the European Union, and to work together, because we have common problems, we have traditions, and I think that we will be able to solve these problems in favor of our nations.
Oh, excellent. Well, that's a very positive note, to see greater cooperation, even where where there's political friction, mostly caused by the United States. Well, on to our next panelist then, Ms. Shaitrali Bosale from India. You are an international business director of the Saisida Sugar Equipment and Engineering Company Private Limited. Questions I would have for you would be, firstly, how do you see, or do you see a lot of scope for business between India and Russia?
Yes, I think there is a lot of scope. There's a lot of scope and possibility of cooperation between Russia and India. However, I feel that so far it has been very slow, and it has not achieved its full potential. Recently, our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, emphasized on the fact that the business relationship between Russia and India needs to go beyond nuclear and the defense sector in general. I feel like as of yet, India has mostly been the buyer and Russia has been the supplier, and I think that needs to change fundamentally. We need to we need to find a way to move beyond this buyer-supply relationship and work collaboratively through joint ventures and other business instruments.
Okay, great. And how do you see your business specifically developing in relation to Russia and the BRICS countries?
Yes, I'm going to come to my business specifically, but even before that, I think there's a lot of scope for energy and minerals in Russia. The region is very rich, and India could invest in these sectors. And on a personal level, for my company, at the moment we are looking at partnering with manufacturing industries, mainly in the UFA region, because it is such an agricultural and a manufacturing hub, and which is why I'm here actually. So if anybody in the room is interested, please do let us know. We're looking at engineering companies, pharmaceutical companies, and agriculture as well.
Russia is quite a strong agricultural country. How does it compare to India, do you think? I mean, which of the two countries do you think would benefit most from import or export of agricultural goods?
I think both the countries would. So far, we don't do a lot of international trade between the two countries. And I think Russia could also benefit from the human capital that we can bring over here. And for the engineering sector, technology transfer can be interesting for both the countries, I think.
Okay, excellent. Well, we might get back to that. And then another person or another Indian citizen, Mr. Manish Kumar, he's Deputy Chief of the Confederation of Indian Businesses, CII. I would like to ask him to tell us a bit more about the Confederation of Indian Industry, because it's a body, I suppose, that also stimulates cooperation between businesses and possibly business and government.
Hello, everyone. CII, Confederation of Indian Industry, is one of the biggest industrial chamber in India, but we consider ourselves as a development institution and partner in India's development journey. So we have, more than 9,000 direct members, and our indirect membership is around 300,000 organizations in the country. Additionally, we got 300 MOUs in at least 135 countries in the world. I mean, next year we are going to have 125th anniversary of CII. So you are all invited to be part of it. Now coming back to our engagement with Russia. See, with Russia we got multiple level of partnership. It means we have MOU with all their national associations like Russian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Business Russia, Russian Union of Entrepreneurship, also BCCI, and we also got partnership at regional level, like Tomsk Chamber of Commerce, Sverdlovsk, Tatarstan, and we look forward to having similar partnership here at Bashkortostan Chamber of Commerce. That allow us to use our multiple level of network. See, India has a very strong federal structure. So majority of the business does not take place in Delhi or Mumbai. The majority of business takes place in different regions in the country. So it's very important, and again, learning for other SCO countries and BRICS countries, it's very important to have establishing those partnerships with different regions. For example, in Russia, we got Tatarstan, Republic of Tatarstan, and they have excellent partnership with one of our state called Andhra Pradesh. It's a southern coastal state, and they have partnership in shipbuilding. So similar models at multiple level of partnerships can be applied between our countries. And here I'm talking with reference to India and Russia. We also got different thematic partnership with Russian organizations. And here, since the topic is entrepreneurship, so I'd like to highlight a fact that CII took a business delegation last year in 2018 December to Skolkovo in Moscow region and also Innopolis in Tatarstan, Kazan. And we signed a MOU to promote entrepreneurship to start, enable an ecosystem where young people, young women can realize their dream and convert them to a sustainable business. We also identify certain areas like health technology, AI, robotics, new areas of business. Because if you see the current bilateral trade between India and Russia is hovering around 10 billion USD. And this thing is mostly about defense, security, energy, and some large big ticket item. So if you really need, like our leaders have set up a target of having 30 billion USD trade, trade volume in next 5 years. So how is this going to happen? We have to expand this basket. To expand the basket, we have to involve SMEs, we have to involve multiple partnerships, and we have to involve new areas of growth. And I know under the current geopolitical context, especially with regard to sanction, our esteemed speaker just mentioned, it presents a huge opportunity for India, China, India, Russia. I'm aware of the fact that Russia and China has done tremendously well, and we would like to have a similar growth of trade, economic, and relationship between India and Russia too, and also with other countries of the SCO regions and BRICS regions. So, CII, so I'd like to, point out like certain institutional strengths of CII. We have this thing called Center for Excellence for SMEs, and that focus primarily on entrepreneurship, small businesses, and gives them hand-holding support, connect them to market, like fund, venture capitalism. And let me tell you, India has the second largest startup ecosystem in the world. Like yesterday morning, I got one message in my mobile saying that this company called Revigo, it's a logistic startup, and they are the 9th startup only from India who became unicorn. Means they got $1 billion funding. So you can estimate the potential of Indian entrepreneurship ecosystem, startup ecosystem. Our government has a scheme called Startup India, Stand Up India. And they promote people who would like to start business. And with reference to India, let me tell you, entrepreneurship is not a luxury, it's a necessity. We have millions of youth coming out of formal education every year, and they don't have job. So our government has asked them, be a job creator. You become entrepreneur, and you give jobs to 10 other people. So, economies like ours, which is still, it's like developing, entrepreneurship is necessary. Because our, formal economy or organized sector cannot give employment to all these, millions of young people who are coming out of schools and education system. So entrepreneur is the need of the hour. And I think we have done tremendously well on that so far. But still we have miles to go on this.
Oh, great. That sounds really excellent. I'm particularly impressed with your phrase, entrepreneurship is not a luxury, it's a necessity. I think if we approach the problem with that mindset, probably we'll have full employment for everybody very soon. But have you actually seen a real impact on, say, youth unemployment? I don't know if there's youth unemployment in India. Is there quite a lot of youth unemployment?
See, right now, as per the data, we are facing one of the highest rate of unemployment. But this is also due to some structural changes economy has taken place. For example, in November 2017, our government announced demonetization. And that means taking all their old currency back and releasing new currency in the market. So Indian economy, let me tell you, still, and it was even before 2017, the majority of economic activity would take place in terms of cash transactions, in terms of off the record. So it's not covered under the tax bracket of the country. And that is changing. So of course, that kind of a structural changes has kept Indian economy and increased the number of unemployed people. But I think it's very transitory phase, and in a year or two, it will again pick up, and people who are left out of that informal economy, they will get absorbed into a formal labor market, and so they can be counted.
Okay, great. Okay, well, let's move on to our next speaker, who is Mr. Carlos Cushel Silva. He's a member of the Chamber of Deputies in Chile, and he's also a member of the friendship group with Russia. My first question to you would be, what potential do you see for your country to cooperate with BRICS, given that the largest economy in South America, Brazil, is already a member?
Hello to everybody. Please excuse my English. Thank you all. I give you best regards from Chile. We are at the end of the world, and we are a little country, a little team in a country with very big groups of other countries, like BRICS, for example. The most important countries of this aggregation are China, India, and far away is Brazil, South Africa, and Russia is also central of this aggregation. And Chile, we are out of the map. So we have to work more. Between our countries is very important to cultivate friendship and confidence, to build alliances like BRICS. Brazil, Russia, Russia, India, China, South Africa. 5 countries, 5 systems. We, a little country, we have also another system. There are many systems in a world bigger system. So you have to build, to construct controversial solutions. You are going to have more frictions. All things are moving. You need aggregation or institutions like BRICS, like OEA, Organización de los Estados Americanos, American, for example, European Union, for to give solution to different controversies that are going to increase. Yesterday I was in another meeting and you were there, and I hear that nowadays, for example, we have a low interest rate, but we have high taxes in every country. I don't know if it's better to have less taxes and some interest. We are politicians here, and we have the whole responsibility, not only in each country, also all over this global world. Now we must to promote good policies and good politics. This is a matter of survival, especially for a little country as Chile. We are near to Brazil, but our main economic partner is China nowadays, and China is in the other side of the world for us.
Yes.
Because of the achievement in transport technologies, in communication technologies, scientific technologies, it is easy to incorporate these technologies, but with more frictions. That's, I see that there are many opportunities, but also opportunities with frictions, and thus these frictions come because we have many systems playing. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for your comprehensive view of where Chile fits into the picture between Latin America and BRICS, and also mentioning that China was such a large trading partner of Chile. Perhaps we can then move on to our next speaker, Mr. Zhao Zhongyuan. He's chairman of Qingdao Aston Engineering Technology Transfer Company Limited. My first question to you would be, how is China dealing with the issue of intellectual property rights? I know there have been some controversies around that, but I think there's a new regime now in China regarding intellectual property.
Okay, thank you. 大家好，这个既然会务组准备了中文的，所以我决定用一下，不辜负会务组的这个精心。
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, we have interpretation from Russian into Chinese and vice versa. I'm from Qingdao. In 2018, we hosted a SCO summit there, and I know that UFA held a SCO summit in 2015. That is why there are lots of common features between our cities. Our company is transferring technology. That is why the question that you've asked is very important for us in the field of intellectual property. I am the founder of our department, and being asked by the moderator, I would like to tell you about the protection of the intellectual property in our country. We all know that China has entered such organizations as SCO and BRICS. So one way, one belt, one way, and if we want to develop international economy, we need to be careful with the security of business and commerce. Otherwise, we won't be able to find common language with our colleagues. But I believe that not only intellectual property has to be protected, it's the whole ecosystem. And within this system, we can find such subsystems as jurisdiction, laws, legislation, finances, taxes. politics of integration of human resources, and so on. And of course, IT, yes. And when we are talking about only about intellectual property, it is not a good way to view this matter, because we need to look at it in a general way. In Tsingtao, we have created a platform. It is about 2,000 square meters, and this platform utilizes 6 parties. So one party is the government. What we did, we located all the state bodies on this platform. We are connecting government and business. The second party are the participants of the business world of China. So these are the corporations, higher, same. And these corporations are helping us to attract smaller companies. We all know that large Chinese companies have lots of patents. Small and medium-sized companies need the help from large companies. The third party is the education, the educational institutions which are located on this platform. Universities have a great amount of intellectual property. They are transferring this property to the other parties and participants of this platform. Next, financial institutions. By placing them there, we are providing financial support of this intellectual property transference, using various mechanisms of obtaining this property. And I believe that one of the most important parties that is going to be mentioned by me is the organization which is working with all of these parties. These are the legal companies, Orwater, House. Also, world-known lawyers are working there. And we are providing maximum legal protection of all the participants of this platform, which are helping the Chinese companies to enter the international market. That is why, by means of creating this ecosystem, we are helping our companies to improve the creation of their own systems within the framework of One Belt, One Way. We are doing our best to improve this development. And currently we are on the verge of creation of Center of Transfer of Technologies within the SCO member countries. We really hope that colleagues who are present here are going to come to us and they are going to become participants of our system.
Well, that sounds really excellent. I'm particularly struck by the idea that, if I understand you correctly, that smaller companies would also get legal access to world-class legal services through your structure or your platform, as you called it. And then the bigger companies would transfer their technology to the smaller and medium-sized players so that they can also participate in business.
Yes, also. 我跟大家分享一下，如果中小型企业直接去找大型的
I will clarify. If SMEs apply directly to such big companies, it's not easy for them to secure the financial part of the deal. That is why we concentrated them all together in this center. After conversations with them, we realize their needs, we pay for the transfer of technologies, and SMEs pay only a small part of this amount. Our government has programs of support of SMEs. For example, we assist SMEs to obtain a patent, and the government provides incentives to the companies which obtain these patents. After obtaining these patents, the government maintains these support measures for a particular company. In addition, we also provide a large number of free services which allow them to work smoothly in the future using these patents. For example, search of technical documentation. I hope you understand what I mean. We provide this platform for search. This is a search platform, and it's free of charge. And monitoring their search targets, we can also assist them, we can support them and find what they need, and we provide them with an access to their personal account in this system. SMEs probably do not have understanding of all the risks and level of protection that they require, but we know that. We realize that extent. Small companies have common problem, lack of financing. They cannot procure these services. That is why their payment is symbolic. It's very small amount of money. It's almost free of charge. This is the method that we apply.
Model that we're hearing there from China, and I particularly like this idea of free services for smaller companies. You know, I'm a great fan of free and the free economy. I don't know about you, but don't you like getting things for free? Back home at our local supermarket, they put out chocolate, you know, for you to taste. And every time I accompany my wife to the supermarket, I make sure that I have my free chocolate. You know, so it sounds to me.
I lost the sentence. Is that if you give the entrepreneur it's a free, but they will give you test more.
Okay.
I think.
Well, let's then move on to our next panelist, Mr. Thabo Mokone from South Africa. He has a political position there. He's the MEC, or the member of the Executive Committee for Economic Development, Environment and Tourism in the province of Limpopo. My first question to him would be, how do you see cooperation between the regions of South Africa, such as Limpopo, and Russia going forward?
Thank you, moderator. The province of Bashkortostan and Limpopo province of South Africa have signed a cooperation agreement in 2016. The objective of the cooperation is to cooperate in agriculture.
Sorry, could I maybe ask you to speak a bit closer to the mic, and then we...
Okay. The objective of the cooperation is to exchange experience in agriculture, mining, tourism, education, and cultural exchange. The relationship between Pakistan of Russia Federation and Limpopo was love at first sight. As time went by, we realized that we needed to continue with the cooperation because it will benefit the two regions. We have agreed that the head of Pakistan province will come to Limpopo in July and June 2020. to finally sign this cooperation. We, as Limpopo province, we are bordering 3 countries, that's Mozambique, Botswana, and Zimbabwe. We are an access or a gateway to 330 million people of Southern African communities. Our province has 80% of platinum deposit, which is the biggest deposit in the whole world. We also have chrome, and we also have PGM metals. We are the biggest producer of agriculture in the Southern Africa, and we produce avocados, tomatoes, and citrus. We are a home of a big 5, that is lion, rhino, buffalo, and elephant, and leopards. And we are a home of the Kruger Park. So in terms of tourism, we think we have to cooperate with Bashkortostan region and the region of BRICS for us to grow our country's interest. So that's how we will continue with this cooperation. Thank you.
Okay, great. Perhaps one question which I would have after what you've said is that you say that Limpopo is a gateway to the rest of Southern Africa. So there's a lot of movement of people and goods. Do you see any technological solutions for facilitating the movement of goods and people? I know there are sometimes some hold-ups on the border there with Zimbabwe. Is that problem being addressed by your government?
Yes. We, as I indicated, that we have a lot of minerals. In that area, we have declared or designated in special economic zones. We are starting a new town, and we have also signed cooperation with the Zimbabweans to start a new town. And we also dealing with a one-stop shop to deal with the movement of people and movement of goods. As you would know, that there was a problem. People were taking time to move in that border gate. We are also talking to the Chinese as members of the BRICS to deal with the industrialization. We are starting companies to manufacture steel using our minerals. We have just come from China. We are just about to start a 360 billion investment in that area, which we are hoping that we will start in April.
Thank you very much. And then our last participant, but hopefully we're going to continue this the discussion afterwards, is Mr. Sergey Lebedev. He's head of the GR department of the Alibaba Group, a very famous group of companies. My first question to him would be, what was the impact of e-commerce on the development of small and medium-sized businesses in the BRICS and SCO countries?
Great, thank you very much. I do represent Alibaba in Russia, Alibaba Russia, and before we start, I would like to make a short comment on Mr. Zhao's speech about the intellectual property rights, because intellectual property issues are the issues that are very sensitive to e-commerce. We are always receiving accusations on internet sales are full of fake products, internet sales kills the country industry, and so on and so forth. Alibaba does care about intellectual property rights. We have a platform, online platform, where every single seller can holder of an intellectual property rights, he can file a complaint, and within 24 hours, we block the item and start an investigation. Then, during the investigation, if it proves to be violation of intellectual property rights, when it is proved that the seller did not have the right to sell this product, or he is selling the fake product, the seller is banned from Alibaba platforms, fined, and against him legal actions are taken. Within past 2 years, we closed 250,000 stores on Alibaba on intellectual property rights violation. 250,000 stores, it's more than all retail in Moscow, for instance. That's a huge amount. Last year, 1,300 small factories were closed in China after Alibaba filed a request on investigation of producing fake products. So the thing is that we do care. And when people say that internet trade is something that violates intellectual property right, I would like to refer to an article that was published in our Russian newspaper like 2 days ago that says like that the 30% of Russian sneakers sold in Russia is fake, which amounts over $1 billion, which is huge. But the thing is that the very same article says that 70% of these sneakers were sold offline. So only one third of them are sold online. Speaking about BRICS countries and the development of e-commerce, luckily we have China in BRICS, which means that we can say that BRICS countries, they set trends on developing e-commerce. China and the United States are the countries that really set trends. Russian e-commerce market develops rapidly. It amounts 1.7 trillion Russian rubles, which is a huge amount. We grow over 30% year on year. This is one of the fastest growth rates. It exceeds the overall growth rate of global e-commerce, which is about 20–25%. Brazil is now developing rapidly its e-commerce. Well, China, we have already said. India is keeping pace as well. And when we are talking about e-commerce, we don't have to forget that there are like two ways. There are two major businesses in e-commerce, and we have two major businesses here in Russia for Alibaba. One is local business, and the second is cross-border. Cross-border, all in all, in the world, it's less than a quarter of all e-commerce sales. Which means, again, there are voices that say, let's protect our countries. Let's stop all this cross-border inflow into countries, because it harms our development, it harms our enterprises, it prevents our economy from sustained development and growth. I'm saying it is very not true. For the first, cross-border is basically not that big. The second, it's, well, relatively competition. And for the third, let's don't forget that when goods stop crossing borders, soldiers will. Which means that this is a common, this is the common sense of international trade. And the thing is that some countries, they do prevent and they do protect their major and core businesses, like Switzerland, for instance. The import tax on milk for Switzerland is over 100%. It's, I think, like 133%. But this is the major industry for Switzerland. It brings the most value to the GDP. It creates lots of employees. and stuff. But let's look at Russia. Unfortunately, our economy is experiencing some turbulence, and there are lots of consumers that are still price sensitive. And cross-border is something that helps them not to survive, but to, let's say, diversify their spendings. Speaking about SMEs, we are at the SME Forum. Internet trade is actually a tool for small and medium enterprises. This is a tool for them to develop because it's cheaper. Don't forget that internet trade or e-commerce, it's not only B2C, it's also a B2B. What we are doing in China, and we have announced it in Russia, and we're planning to promote it in Russia, is the e-commerce for B2B, which means that small and medium enterprises like shops and stores, convenience stores, or neighborhood stores, they can order goods on a platform. It is working in China already, and we are trying to promote it here in Russia. Don't forget that only 40% of retail volume is done by huge chains, which means that the rest, like 60%, is medium enterprises and small enterprises. And e-commerce is something that gives them the opportunity to compete with big chains because it saves costs, it does not limit the SKUs, and it doesn't have any borders. We deliver across Russia. AliExpress, Global AliExpress delivers in every single country in the world. So this is an opportunity, and this is a good opportunity that I think, and I truly believe, have to continue. And I don't think that any country should be afraid of, developing e-commerce and preventing the market from cross-border inflow.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for that very informative overview of Alibaba and e-commerce development. You said that China and the USA set trends. And what do you see as the new trends in e-commerce, and how it's going to affect the BRICS economies?
Right. So one of the trends I've already spoken about a bit, it's the B2B e-commerce.
Okay.
The other one is, so all the trends actually that we have in e-commerce are actually driven by the consumer. The consumer behavior changes, and so the e-commerce changes as well. For instance, over 60% of all sales are made via mobile phones. So 60% is made through the app, and I would say that, let's say, China and Russia are probably the only countries in the world where you can safely leave home without a wallet, just with your phone. Anywhere you can buy anything with your phone. 60% of sales as well are made on promotions. So that means that the consumers that buy in e-commerce market, they are really price sensitive. So it means it counts like almost 60%. We noticed that cross-border market actually in Russia is shrinking a bit. It's slowing down, but our internal market is growing rapidly. I'm saying it's growing over 30% year on year. And we have actually more and more enterprises trying to get on e-commerce platforms and sell their goods via e-commerce. So the major trend, it's growing rapidly. The other trend is the logistics. Because especially in China, the consumer is not ready to wait more than 3 days for something. Chinese consumers are rather sophisticated in e-commerce. Russian consumers, they can wait a month even, or 2 weeks. But in China, it's very important to deliver the goods within 2 or 3 days. What we have now in China, we are having a flash delivery within a day in big cities. We have it in Moscow as well, only in Moscow and St. Petersburg yet. But we are trying to develop logistics. Logistics is not just, from one city to another, but it's the last mile, and which is the most important, the first mile. The marketplace, the e-commerce, it gives the opportunity for the seller to choose either to use their own logistics or to use the logistics of the marketplace.
Okay, excellent. Well, I don't know if we have the facilities to take questions from the audience, perhaps. Is that possible? Or shall we just continue the discussion amongst ourselves here on the stage? I actually wanted to, getting back to this idea of exchange between the regions, perhaps I can get back to Mr. Thabo Mokone. Have you felt that this visit was very useful in extending, exchange between Bashkortostan and Limpopo?
Yeah, thanks very much. I think for me this conference was very fruitful. There are a lot of programs that we were presented and we learned from them. We also learned about the issue of entrepreneurship, which we're going to deal with at home. As I said, that we are dealing with industrialization. As you know, we're coming from a difficult situation at home, and we are industrializing our town. And we think with this exchange, we'll then be able to develop our people. We're also dealing with the issue of universities, which we agreed with Bashkortostan that we're going to have an exchange program. Our students coming here and also coming to assist us in our province.
Okay, great. I'm also a question that came up in my mind during this discussion was, especially our colleague from China. He was talking about how the Chinese government actually helps the companies to register patents and so on. So I was wondering whether the future of small and medium-sized business is more technologically oriented, or whether it also has to do with some of the more basic goods, say food and transport, or even in the building industry and so on. Where should the focus be for small and medium-sized businesses? Should we only focus on technology, or should we also look at the more traditional products, even alcohol, even though I seem to pick up here in Russia that the alcohol these days is a bit frowned upon in Russia, but a lot of, in South Africa, for example, a lot of people still dream about becoming wine farmers and exporting their wines all over the world. I don't know if members of the panel have any opinions on that, the high-tech versus the more low-tech industries for SMEs. Perhaps you have an opinion, Mr. Wan? Yes.
To my point of view, innovation is modernization. It's not manufacturing. It's very important to understand the difference, because all the innovations which we have at the moment are based on traditional spheres. For example, Alibaba company. It could be a product like vodka, since you've mentioned alcohol. A product could be technology, for example, something what university studies Today, it can be everything. Innovation is not manufacturing, is not production of something. In our country, our government has a motto that innovation and entrepreneurship work together. We support the companies, the enterprises with innovative approach, in particular SMEs. In China there is a very famous saying, technology is a key driver of manufacturing. I have been hearing this phrase since I was a kid, and this is the way we are moving forward. Innovation, which is discussed in China, is modernization of traditional structure. All the elements of the new ecosystem based on their changes, innovation is determined.
Okay, yes, I can definitely see that even in traditional industries, technology must have a major impact, especially in distribution, which nowadays is taking place a lot on the internet. Does anybody else on the panel have an opinion about that, or the traditional versus technological industries for SMEs? Would you like? Okay.
Thank you. Just to show as a beginning that we have also a good sense of humor, you mentioned about the free chocolate, but you know very well, you and your wife, that you are going to pay the chocolate because the price is incorporated in the price of the other goods. So there is no free lunch in this world. Talking about the mid-size and small companies, there is a room for development in different directions. In the production of traditional goods, but mainly in my country and everywhere. I think the small and mid-sized companies are oriented mainly in services, but I have in mind a number of cases in Bulgaria, companies who started or which started, people who started and companies which started as a small companies. For example, back in 1991, a small company of 3 people started the production of consumer electronics. It's in the field of the radio amateurs producing amplifiers, high frequencies. They started with an export of 5 units monthly, 10 units monthly. At the moment, the previous small company became a huge company with more than 300 employees, and they control 30% of the world market of amplifiers on shortwaves, HF. So you have different examples. Also, small and mid-sized companies are very flexible when it comes to risky investments, simply because the risk for the commercial banks and other institutions is much lower. If they invest in a relatively small company, the risk is relatively smaller than investing hundreds of millions of dollars or euros in huge company, you know, because the risk is relatively high in the modern technologies. From that perspective, everything is possible. That is why the governments around the world, I think it's a good decision, they support the mid-sized and small companies. In my country, in Bulgaria, we have a special agency for SMEs. These agencies has different activities, easing the life of these SMEs, giving them opportunities for international contacts. In addition to this, we have a specially designed export agency, which is also focused on SMEs, and they ensure the export of the mid-sized and small companies, giving them additional opportunity to eliminate the business risk of exporting. In addition to this, in Bulgaria, we have a fully state-owned Bulgarian Development Bank. The capital of the bank is 1.5 billion euros, and the focus of this state-owned bank is to stimulate not only, but mainly SMEs. The interest rates are lower, the grace period is longer for the SMEs, so it's additional tool to stimulate the SMEs. It's not only because of economic reasons, because also I think everywhere around the world, approximately 80% of the companies are SMEs, and the percentage of corporations is relatively smaller, though the share of SMEs in the GDP is a little bit lower than 80%, but in any case, the SMEs are of extreme importance for the economic development in any country. And finally, talking about traditional products and innovation, I think that other things being equal, not I, just the statistical data shows that SMEs have a better chance when it comes to risk capital and innovations, because the following very simple reason. If you're talking about a regular common goods, there is no way a small company would compete in the production of food products or anything other traditional, simply because if they have conversations, negotiations with Chinese company, for instance, in Bulgaria, so they're not capable of exporting sufficient quantity of goods, traditional goods, to China. Let me give you an example. A few months ago, a group of Chinese investors asked me to meet and discuss the investment opportunities in Bulgaria. They meet different experts from the parliament, from the government, but they asked me at the very beginning, Mr. Gechev, we are looking for initial pilot project in Bulgaria, but nothing less than $400 million. So give me a huge project. Obviously, there is no way for the SMEs in Bulgaria to negotiate for such projects, but there is a way to negotiate through the big Bulgarian companies, because as you know, the SMEs cannot exist without huge corporations. The SMEs, they need subcontracts with the huge companies. That's the way it works. You have a big brother and you have a small brothers working together. So finally, the future of SMEs depends also on the efficiency and the development of the huge companies. So from that point of view, the division between SMEs and huge corporations is, I would say, rather theoretical, because in practice they are mutually dependent. Thank you.
Well, I think that's a very interesting point, that the big companies and the small companies, or, okay, you've got another comment. Okay, please go ahead.
See, I think, technology can be a great enabler for, SMEs and small and medium enterprises. See, I like to, highlight three initiatives, what we have in India. First is this Digital India Hub. It's a, technology platform for all the startups. So you don't need to be in a big city or great schools. You can register your initiative from anywhere in the country. So it's an equalizing, platform. Another one, in terms of, obtaining tender with this, public sector enterprises. So in India has started this e-procure. So even if you are sitting in Ufa, and you can go to the site, and all the government tenders, the federal government, regional government, municipality, wherever the public money is involved, you can check the opportunities. So in the geography, country, no boundary in terms of information. If you are a smart parking, kind of, some sensor you have and you want to, sell it in India, the first step you can go to e-portal, e-procure, and see which municipalities in India, which regional government in India are offering or requesting, kind of bid or offered from you. So starting point could be that. Another initiative I would like to highlight, the third one, that we work with Russian Export Center. And every month we organize this webinar kind of thing, like video conference. So you can sit anywhere in Russia, and our partner, our member companies can sit anywhere in India, and we are connected with that login. So you can do the initial discussion, and if you find there is some interesting thing coming up, you can do a follow-up on your own, up to you. And we do this every month on different sectors. In recent past, we have done this on food manufacturing and food processing, ship manufacturing, cyber security, and now as a follow-up, all these Russian companies, they are coming to India to meet with their partners who they already had some kind of discussion, negotiation through video conference. So this is another way where technology can connect all the SMEs in low or free cost to just internet, and you can talk to your partner and start negotiating. So,
well, excellent. Thank you for that contribution. We've heard a lot about the cooperation between the government and the SMEs, but I have a bit of worry about some of the governments in the world, especially the more powerful ones, such as in the USA, where they have arbitrarily imposed at times very large fines on, for example, European banks in the billions of dollars, and also some of the, obviously around the Volkswagen pollution scandal, there were some very huge, there were some huge fines there too. And I know a South African company, a mobile phone company, MTN, they apparently contravened a regulation in Nigeria a few years ago. And then Nigeria slapped them with a $10 billion fine. And it was eventually negotiated down to, I think, $1 billion. But, it seems that to some, at a certain level, companies are still exposed to the whims of government. And I wonder how we can deal with that also when it comes to SMEs who have far less power, obviously, than these huge multinational companies. Perhaps, Mr. Silva, you've been in politics. How do you think one can deal with situations like that when a government sees a company in its country and it just imposes a fine on it or some arbitrary sum that it's got to pay? Do you think those issues can be resolved diplomatically or?
With the time, we discover every day new situations, unexpected, and I see that politics, regulations go later, and sometimes we don't have the scientific information at the real time. The innovation is go in every direction, and the legislation, control, government sometimes don't have the information, the tools. That's is our work to know, to understand the progress in benefit of all the people. Then the companies procure the benefit only for each company, and in politics we try to distribute benefits when it's possible. That is our work every day. taking in consideration every aspect. Every day we have new challenge, new notices about difficulties, about opportunities.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Well, I think we've had a pretty interesting discussion. If I had to summarize, we started off thinking about the economic potential that could be unleashed by the whole BRICS group of countries and SCO countries, the potential for further economic growth. We had a very interesting contribution from our Bulgarian colleague here, who was of the opinion that eventually the European Union would have to cooperate with BRICS because in the area of energy, especially gas that is being supplied to Western Europe, there's just so much more gas in Russia available for Western Europe, and there's also some stagnation in within the European Union. And in order to get more economic growth, there will have to be more cooperation with BRICS, and where especially China, with its very large economy, plays such a big role. Mr. Lebedev also mentioned that both China and the USA were drivers of innovation and trends. He outlined those trends for us, and he emphasized that those trends are often consumer-driven, that each individual out there making a decision, especially in the e-commerce arena, he is driving the change and the innovation. And regarding the issue of intellectual property rights, an accusation that is often leveled against China that it disregards intellectual property and that it often produces fake goods. Mr. Xiao Zhongwan, he assured us that there has been a change in China, and also in Alibaba, companies are kicked off that sell fake products, and China is now more aligned with actually producing its own innovation, and where there seems to be marvelous support that many other countries could probably imitate for SMEs, where they are helped with technology transfer and access to what I would call corporate or enterprise level services when it comes to legal support and patent, helping them to register patents or to get access to patents that have been registered by big companies. So obviously we can see why China in very many areas of the economy are so successful, because they have a plan that is working and that we can perhaps imitate in some of our countries. Our two panelists from India also told us to what extent there is a lot of support for companies in India, and that there is access to government, and that government is very supportive of SMEs, and even at the regional level. Talking about the regions, we're in Bashkortostan at the moment, enjoying the tremendous hospitality and cultural delights of this region, and itself is also an actor and a role player in economic exchange, and it could exchange with Limpopo in South Africa and many other regions in the world. So it's not a kind of a top-down process that we're involved in trying to help small and medium-sized enterprises. It's more of a lateral, horizontal process where there are so many role players, both in the regions and in the commercial associations or associations of companies, with supporting small business. We've also heard that there's quite a lot of support for youth development, and in India, especially, where there's specific focus on creating youth employment through the slogan, entrepreneurship is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And I know back home in my own country, in South Africa, there's a thing called the National Youth Development Agency, NIDA, which makes it easier for young people who want to be entrepreneurs to get capital or to get equipment to make a start in business. So on that note, unless anybody in the audience has a burning question for us, I think we can declare the session closed, and I want to thank everybody for having patiently listened to us, and I hope you've been as stimulated as I have been in listening to our very informed and stimulating group of panelists. Thank you very much. Good. Okay, excellent. Good.